Okay, so we're at page 1. The first thing we're going to talk about is the square of an integer. And that number, that result, is something that we call a perfect square.
I usually flat, like 1 times 2, 2 times 3, 3 times 2.
Raise your hand if you've heard the term perfect square before. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. So we are going to have to be doing a little bit of back and forth. What I would like you to do is go to page 3. What? Okay, 1 squared means 1 times 1, which equals 1. What does 2 squared mean? Which is what? 4. 3 squared means 3 times 3, which is, what did you say, Landon? Yes. You want to pick that up?
Yeah, pick it up.
Which one of you threw the marker?
Always.
Just pick it up, Matthew, and put it where it goes. Okay, what does 4 squared mean? 4 times 4, which is... Okay, let's talk about why it's called a perfect square. Seriously, Matthew, just pick it up. Okay, if I have... Well, that didn't work. If I have a 3 by 3 square... How many squares are inside of my 3 by 3 square? 9. Okay, that's why it's called a perfect square. Okay. All right, 5 squared means 5 times 5, which is what? 25. So these numbers that we're writing in this column up here that I just circled, those are our perfect square numbers. 9 is a perfect square. 16 is a perfect square. Okay. 6 squared means 6 times 6, which is what? 36. 7 squared means 7 times 7, which is? Okay. What's nice is you should not have to memorize these because you should know your multiplication facts. 8 squared means 8 times 8, which is 64. 9 squared means 9 times 9, which is 81. 10 squared is 10 times 10. 100, okay? So at least 1 through 10, I mean, those should be fairly familiar numbers, okay? 11 through 20, this is where we're going to have to think a little bit, okay? 11 times 11 is what 11 squared means. What is it? 121. 12 squared means 12 times 12, which is 144. Yeah. You're writing these down, right? Okay. 13 squared means 13 times 13. 169. 14 squared is nice because when we take 14 times 14, we get 196. So notice how the 6 and the 9 trade places from 13 to 14. I find that helps me remember those. 15 squared means 15 times 15, which is 225. 16 squared means 16 times 16, which is 256. 17 squared is 17 times 17. 289. No. 18 squared, 18 times 18 is 324. 19 squared, 19 times 19 is 361. And then 20 times 20. Okay, 2 times 2 is 4, and then we have both of those zeros. We get 400. Okay, these are numbers I need you to be familiar with. Okay, I need you to be familiar with. Okay, so we're going to go back to page 1. Okay, and on page 1, will you take a moment and fill in the perfect squares 1 through 10, just like we did? Okay, on page 1, you have the perfect squares of 1 through 10, but we also need to know 11 through 20. So you're going to want to spend some time looking at that chart on page 3. Okay, so the inverse of squaring a number is what we call the square root. Okay, do you know what symbol the square root looks like? It sort of looks like the divide sign, but not quite. Yep, so that's a square root. Not quite. Okay. So positive numbers, when I ask you, like if you were to find the roots, if we have a positive number, there are actually 2 square roots. Why would a number have 2 different square roots? So let's talk about this. 4 times 4 is 16, correct? Is there another number times itself that equals 16? A number times itself. Question, what's a negative times a negative? Okay. Oh, a negative 4 times a negative 4. So 4 squared is 16. And negative 4 squared is 16. Okay, so technically, if I ask you to find a root, then there could be a positive or a negative. Okay, really, I'm just going to give you which one you're finding. You'll know whether it needs to be positive or negative. But when you get into algebra, this will be an important concept. Okay, is it possible to have a number times itself equal a negative value? Give me an example. a number times itself. That is not what you told me.
Negative 4 times positive 4?
That's not a number times itself. That's two different numbers that we're multiplying. So like 4 times 4 is a number times itself. Negative 4 times negative 4 is a number times itself. Is there any way to take two numbers that are the same, multiply them, and get a negative answer? No, there's not. So negative numbers have no square roots. Okay, it's not going to happen. Okay, there is a number that has only one square root.
What's a little 1?
It's not 1. What'd you say? 0. The square root of 0 is 0. And we wouldn't have to worry about any positives or negatives with 0. I'll get there. Okay. All right. So what I want you to do, much to your dismay, I would like you to go back to page 3. Okay. So the square root symbol is asking you what number squared is that? Okay. So this guy right here, the square root of 4. What number squared gives us 4? Okay. Since 2 squared equals 4, then the square root of 4 equals 2. Okay. If I'm asking you for the square root of 9, I'm asking you what number squared is 9. 3 squared is 9, so the square root of 9 is 3. What? Do you have a question? Okay, cool. Okay. How about the square root of 16? Since 4 squared is 16, the square root of 16 is 4. This is why I need you to know these numbers. Okay. Okay. Since 5 squared is 25, the square root of 25 is 5. Some of you are figuring out the pattern, right? What's the square root of 36? 6. What's the square root of 49? What's the square root of 64? 8. The square root of 81 is 9. The square root of 100 is 10. The square root of 121 is 11. The square root of 144 is 12. The square root of 169 is 13. The square root of 196 is 14. Again, I'm going to point out that the digits 9 and 6 trade places from 13 to 14 squared. The square root of 225 is 15. The square root of 256 is 16. The square root of 289 is 17. Square root of 324 is 18. Square root of 361 is 19. And the square root of 400 is 20. Okay, so you need to be able to, really, you need to know the chart I have in pink. Because if you know the chart I have in pink, then you can answer the questions over there in green, right? Okay, so let's go back to page 1. You won't have to go back to page 3 unless you forget a number. Okay, so back to page 1. Okay, like we talked about, there's going to be 2 different roots. You could have a positive square root or you can have a negative square root. And what I'm going to do, it's either going to look like this or it's going to look like this. So if there's a negative out front, we just keep that negative out front and go about our business the same way. Okay. So, without looking at page 3, let's see if we can do some of these. So don't shout it out. Think of it first. The square root of 49. I'm asking you what number squared is 49? Didn't I just say don't shout it out? Landon.
7.
Oh, Landon says 7. Do you agree? Okay. Think about it. Don't shout it out. The square root of 9. What number squared gives us 9? Charmony, what would you say? 3. Okay. Now, in number 3, notice how there's that negative out front. Okay? So we're going to keep the negative, and then the square root of 4 would be what number? 2, because 2 squared is 4. Okay. Okay, number 4 and number 5. See if you can write down those answers without looking at page 3. Talk to your neighbor about it. That's fine. Page 4, numbers 4 and 5.
289. 17.
All right. Elaine, what'd you write for number 4? Okay, did you put a negative in front of it? Okay, good. So negative 17. The negative stays, and then 289 is the square of 17. Okay, number 5. Jacob, what'd you write?
Number 5, 14.
Negative 14. 14 squared is 196. Make sure you keep the negative if there's a negative. Now, fractions. Fractions scare us. No, they shouldn't. Okay? Are both 1 and 16 perfect squares? They are. So if they're both perfect squares, that's a good thing, because we can think about the square root of 1 separately from the square root of 16. What's the square root of 1?
1.
And what's the square root of 16?
4.
So our answer is 1 over 4. Right? That's not that bad, right? It's like 2 problems in 1. Okay. In number 8, we have a negative. Okay. Let's think about the square root of 81 first. What would that be? 9. And then how about the square root of 25? There's our answer. Okay. Write down the answer you think is number 9. Easy. All right. All right, Landon. What was that answer? Just tell me.
12.
7 over 12. All right, without looking at page 3, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to circle all the perfect squares you can recognize. Ready, set, go. Circle all the perfect squares you recognize. Nope.
Tree.
All right, Carlos, give me 1. 9. Okay. Matthew, give me another one. Sophia, give me another one. 121. Awesome.
I just have a quick question.
Okay.
Do you have any idea in Savas, can I save just the homework as a
Hold on. Let me finish this and let me get them on a task. Okay, come on in. Do you have your computer? No. Okay. Jaden, give me another one. 64. Is there another one?
Yeah.
Which one?
324.
324. Okay. Now, what I'm going to have